Huge news for SpaceX enthusiasts. The US Air Force just announced their all-new military ship program, and it seems that SpaceX will be the most likely candidate for creating it. In fact, there has also been government funding for SpaceX in the past for similar projects to this one. To learn more about this project, as well as what it ultimately means for the future of space exploration and development, let us explore everything you need to know about SpaceX's recently revealed military ship. So, first things first, how did it come to fruition? You see, the idea of SpaceX creating a military-grade spacecraft isn't a new one. In fact, the US government has already financed SpaceX to develop countless other projects. First of all, back in 2020, the US Transportation Command was discussing Starship's potential to deliver up to 100 tons of cargo anywhere in the world in under an hour. This would have significantly improved delivery times of cargo that is urgently needed on virtually any corner of the Earth. Furthermore, this would allow humanity to literally jump towards the goal of fast and efficient transportation around the world. The Pentagon, which was closely monitoring the development of this concept, showed a very large interest in expanding it eventually. This interest resulted in the Pentagon announcing the rocket cargo program only a year later, in 2021. This program was designed to test the possibilities of utilizing spaceships for rapid transport, while also serving as a filter for testing the capabilities of numerous companies that specialize in space transportation. Can you guess which company passed that filter with flying colors? That's right, SpaceX. As a result, in 2022, SpaceX was awarded a whopping $102 million to demonstrate the Starship's ability to transport military cargo and humanitarian aid. The spaceship that is currently being used for the rocket cargo program is a SpaceX Starship with a bunch of modifications that will grant it optimal suborbital performance. Unfortunately, though, after the announcement, both SpaceX and the Pentagon went silent regarding the program, with little to no updates concerning its development and future. Thankfully, though, that silence was broken after new information for the rocket cargo program was revealed to the public. What is happening with the project? Worry not, the project is still going on at full throttle, and there is no intention of stopping it anytime soon. The project itself is in the data gathering phase, and it'll remain in it until both the Pentagon and SpaceX get stable, promising, and adequate results from the Starship that is currently being used. The program itself is expected to go on for at least 3 more years, as a 5-year contract has been signed by both the Air Force and SpaceX back in 2022. When it comes to the data gathering phase, the aforementioned Starship rocket that is being used is currently gathering all the information required for additional insights and further development. As of now, the data gathering phase is expected to last well into 2024. After the gathering phase, the Air Force and SpaceX will then resort to using a mock-up version of the Starship either in late 2024 or in early 2025. This will be a mock-up of the Starship's upper stage, and it will be used to test the rocket's rapid loading and unloading of cargo. The mock-up in question is already quite close to completion according to official sources, despite the complete lack of photos, and it is also said that we can expect its reveal to happen sometime during 2024. After that, we can expect the beginning of the true test of this entire initiative, which is scheduled for 2026. At that point, SpaceX will demonstrate its capability to launch rockets at an incredibly fast pace and transport substantial amounts of cargo quickly, both to and from orbit. However, it's not as easy as it seems, as there are a few hardships that SpaceX and Air Force have experienced, which is why we have to ask ourselves, what are these problems? The biggest issue that has presented itself has by far been the enormous difference in pressure between the Starship being in the atmosphere versus out of it. As we can all logically deduce, not all cargo has been, nor will it be, designed for such a violent pressure change. Quite a lot of stuff that'll be transported will be quite susceptible and vulnerable to these enormous pressures. You see, when cargo that hasn't been designed for such drastic changes hits a hard vacuum, there might be some catastrophic results. For example, putting vehicles in the Starship would prove to be extremely problematic, as once the rocket enters a hard vacuum, all greases and liquids, such as fuel or oil, will vaporize instantly. And since vehicles will need to be fully operational once on the ground, requiring extra time to re-oil them before they become usable is unacceptable if tight time limits need to be fulfilled. Furthermore, there is a very high possibility that a lot of the cargo won't even get in one piece to the orbit. Why? Because of the huge problem that arises from the incredibly high amount of turbulence, especially during the Starship's launch. As a result, SpaceX and Air Force both must work incredibly hard to understand the effects that these extreme pressure changes might have on their precious cargo, as well as think of a way to properly negate the effects that come with them. The Air Force is also currently collecting data concerning the vibe and shock part of the takeoff, and is also thinking of the best countermeasure possible. As of now, there have been a few suggestions and ideas on how to counter these problems, and the most notable one is by far the state-of-the-art pressure mounts that have been designed. These pressure mounts will allow the cargo to withstand the drastic pressure changes, while also allowing the cargo to remain in one piece during the rocket's takeoff. Furthermore, these problems will get better once the rockets get bigger. However, at the moment, they're still looking for a solution that will allow them to negate these effects, no matter the rocket size, which is why they're still, quote-unquote, stuck in the data-gathering phase. All in all, despite these problems, the project is expected to be completed before 2030, which then leads us to the next question, and that is, what does it mean for the future of spacecrafts? Quite a lot. First, spacecrafts will now have a much wider range of uses. Instead of being used exclusively for space exploration, rockets and spaceships will now be used on Earth too. SpaceX officials went out and said that, by 2030, SpaceX expects to launch at least one Starship a day for these military cargo missions. Not to mention that it is also expected that further down the line, the rocket cargo program will also carry out one launch per day on each launch pad, which would further increase the effectiveness of the whole program. Some people even believe that this will eventually completely replace regular air logistics and even maritime shipping, because the delivery times will be practically instantaneous. We're not so sure about this, primarily because the Starship itself is incredibly expensive to both build and run, and secondly because its full capacity simply isn't great enough to truly replace traditional transportation. What we do believe, though, is that since the range of uses will be much broader than what it is currently, we can expect more companies to start investing in spacecraft. This will, in turn, lead to a much greater number of spacecraft available, and will spontaneously speed up the development of these vehicles. Not to mention that, by giving SpaceX the green light to work on even more government projects than before, the Pentagon will have directly allowed the private sector to take over NASA's work, which, albeit somewhat sad, is also great news because space exploration, as well as increased utilization of these kinds of vehicles, will also come with the wider attendance of a larger amount of companies. Also, despite our hesitancy to believe that the rocket cargo project will allow for a massive shift towards space transport, we still believe that it will be humanity's step closer to that. Even though we don't believe that the Starship itself will be a good choice for much more widespread use, some of its successors that'll come in the upcoming decades might be a perfect fit for such an incredible task. All in all, we salute SpaceX for driving the development of spacecraft further, while also saluting the US Air Force for having an open mind and properly working towards our future in space.